Beep 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 beep. Beep beep. Seems like there's always a threat brewing on the internet. Strong encryption protects your data by assuring it can only be decrypted with the exact encryption key used. This video is going to show you how these three numbers are going to help you choose a key to fit your need. And if you want a preview, in the end I'll be suggesting 128. Okay, you know at the end of those drug commercials where they talk real fast and tell you the side effects? Well, here comes this one for cryptography. Cryptography only works for you if your computer is secure. That means it's not sending copies of files or keystrokes somewhere else before they get encrypted. That means you don't have malicious software or hardware. That means, for instance, your PDF reader, your browser, your processor haven't been corrupted. Your operating system like MS, Windows, Linux, or Unix hasn't been corrupted. Your chips, like your Intel, AMD, or graphics card chips, have not been corrupted. So if you think you got some of this stuff on your box and you think that whoever put it there is really going to activate it against you, encryption ain't going to do a thing for you. You might as well get out of here, close your windows, and move. Because the best doors and locks and windows in the world aren't going to protect you against someone who's already inside your house. But if you're near average and just don't want big data poking around your stuff, coming by and just harvesting it, then what we're going to show you in the most, fun and knowledge-filled way that we could figure out was what kind of encryption stuff you need, what's a little bit too much, and what to watch out for, all with encryption. All in the next couple of minutes. So sit back and really enjoy the show. The vehicle we're going to use to illustrate this are two NSA-approved encryption specifications, DES and AES. DES is the old standard, but it just might be good enough to get you where you need to go. AES is the new improved standard and comes with additional safety features. Just to stay with the car analogy another moment, during this tour you may see this image, which means that there are additional videos, or this image, which means that you can find additional material from our book, which is online. Get links to both of them from our website. In the early 70s, cries for a crypto standard started coming from businesses who were using computers to encrypt their data, and they had no idea what was good crypto and what was bad. Before DES, there was no cryptographic research outside NSA. Who cared? It was the stuff for spies. NSA, whose budget is still secret, was affectionately known as no such agency. Nevertheless, NSA got involved and sanctioned DES as being an approved method. More than a few people felt that this was an incredible NSA mistake because now academics had an encryption algorithm to take a look at that NSA said, hey, this is pretty good. DES specifications are openly published in FIPS Pub 46. They're an open book. This just heralded in academic research, not only on cryptanalyzing DES, but making new cryptographic algorithms. And yet, almost 40 years after this publication, academics have found no feasible attack against DES. So if you can't attack a cipher directly using statistics, the next best thing is to try every key. And that's how we're going to evaluate these different encryption methods. How many keys has the cryptanalyst got to try? This is called a brute force attack, or an exhaustive key search, and is exactly analogous to trying every single possible combination on a lock. DES has about this many keys, and since we're going to evaluate these encryption methods based on how many keys, it's instructive to take a look at how big a number this is. This would be 1,000, here's 1,000,000, here's 1,000,000,000 keys, and here's 1,000,000,000,000 keys. And here's 72,000 trillion keys, which is about 2 raised to the 56th power. The exponent following the 2, in this case 56, is often referred to as the length of the cryptographic key. Soon we'll see key lengths of 128 and 256. And by the way, those of you that have seen our Encryption Basics 2 video, Shuffle has about this many keys. If the cryptanalyst has unbelievable bad luck, he'll have to try this many keys before he finds yours. But if he has average luck, he'll find your key in about this many tries. So let's see how long it takes to try 36,000 trillion keys. First, we should note that your typical desktop computer only does about 3 billion operations per second. So for sure, anyone trying to find a particular DES key is throwing a lot more at it than a desktop computer. Now, there are some ways to crank this up and do some tricks. So let's say that some group has put together a bunch of computers that can try 1,000,000,000,000 keys per second. Well, if you can try 1,000,000,000,000 keys per second, you can try 60 trillion in a minute, 3,600 trillion in an hour. So in 10 hours, you can try 36,000 trillion. But remember, you're using a lot of these resources to do nothing else but searching for one key. So why go through all this hassle? Why not just store unencrypted data, often called clear or plain text? If these terms are confusing to you, again, please see our encryption basics videos. Taking this route is often called security by obscurity. Who cares? I mean, who cares about my stuff anyway? Well, as we all know now, just about everybody, up through and including NSA. Well, might as well start at the top. Here's a little truncated quote. Who do you think said this? So as you can see, advanced intelligence has been important for a while. There's no doubt about cryptanalysts helping win wars. As most people know, cryptanalysts enabled the US to know Japanese and German plans before they were executed. Just 6 months after Pearl Harbor, codebreakers were able to determine the date and location of a Japanese attack. This enabled the U.S. military to destroy 4 aircraft carriers of the Japanese Navy. And less than a year after that, another encryption break enabled them to set up an assassination of the mastermind of Pearl Harbor. Many, if not most, governments restrict the use of cryptography. Our government classifies cryptography as a munition of war, the same as a tank. For example, in 1967, they tried to restrict the publication of the groundbreaking book, The Codebreakers. In 1995, there was a widespread government effort to force the use of the Clipper chip. This would have given NSA and others a legal backdoor into all encryption. And our government's one of the more lenient governments. Other governments, well, they demand that you only use products approved by a committee. You can't even develop your own. So in 1975, after IBM incorporated an NSA suggestion into what was to become the DES cipher, significant controversy immediately arose. And just like life, it wasn't black and white, it's gray. NSA altered the DES cipher. But years and years later, academicians discovered that NSA actually impeded a really esoteric attack against the cipher and made IBM sign a whole bunch of stuff saying that they wouldn't disclose what happened. On the other side, NSA reduced the key length of DES, so therefore they wouldn't have to search through as many keys. And in 1977, DES became an official U.S. government encryption standard and remained that way for more than 20 years. The whole DES story is a textbook example of politics making strange bedfellows. No well-funded government or company uses DES anymore because a DES key can be brute forced in just a few hours. And if you think you have a well-funded adversary, DES doesn't do it for you. That said, what are you using cryptography for? You got to think of the attacker's cost-benefit ratio. The cost is a whole bunch of computers strung together to do a brute force. Don't hide the secret to Coca-Cola's formula with DES. If you're Warren Buffett, don't hide your next buy with DES, that's for sure. But if your secrets aren't worth that much and you're just getting into cryptography and want to see how easy it is, definitely give our free DES a try. But what about the future? Cryptographers like saying attacks only get better, they never get worse. And just as importantly, according to Moore's law, in about 10 years computers will be 100 times faster. In 15 they'll be 1,000 times faster. In 30 they'll be 1,000,000 times faster. So maybe there's something or somebody out there just collecting this data saying, hey, 15 years I'll get this key in 36 seconds. Hey, storage is cheap. In 30 years I'll find this key in just less than a second. I'll just sit on it till then. If you're concerned about the smile on this man's face, you can use triple DES, but as the name implies, it requires more than one secret key. Henceforth, we introduce AES. AES is the winner of a U.S. federal government encryption contest that was awarded in 2001. It's the current U.S. federal government encryption standard. AES comes in 3 different lengths, 128, 192, and 256. We're going to focus on the 128 and 256. Here's a comparison of the different key lengths comparing DES with an AES key. Just like DES, there's been no feasible attack against AES, so your attacker's best alternative is to try every key. And if it takes about 10 hours to find the DES key, every time you see a comma, add another 1,000 times. So I won't even consider the first comma. I'll start here. This would be 10,000 hours. This is 10 million hours, 10 billion hours. You get the idea. Finally, compare AES 128 versus AES 256. AES 256 has this many keys. Don't let the 115 in the front confuse you. There's a wide variety of opinions if you need AES 256. I tend to go with AES 128. You can Google and find the opinion which backs up your prejudices. I just got to share this story. A little girl was asked, well, what's the biggest number in the world? And she thought for a while and said 112. Well, she was then asked, what about 113? Well, she came right back and replied, hey, I was pretty close, wasn't I? You might see that AES is broken, and that's true. So why in the world would I advise using a broken cipher? First, you got to see what they mean by broken cipher. By definition, that's anything faster than brute force. And if you recall, that AES 128 has about this many keys, which means that someone that can find your key by only looking at this many keys has broken the cipher. Now, that said, most cipher breaks aren't, like one key. Most of them are along these lines. But that's still way too many keys to make the attack feasible or practical. Here's HX Mel's reasoning, that's me, why we chose AES 128. Full disclosure, I'm the author of Cryptography Decrypted. I'm a user and trainer of cryptography. I developed the Decrypt program, but I'm not a cryptographer nor a cryptanalyst. So, as just noted, as of 2014, there haven't been any feasible attacks against any AES implementation. Not 128, not 196, not 256. Interestingly enough, there have been more attacks against the bigger size keys of AES than the 128 key. If you're interested in seeing the difference between attacking the key and attacking the method, please see our Encryption Basics 1 and 2 videos. Since AES 256 is much bigger than AES 128, let's compare the different times it takes to do a brute force attack. We were evaluating this at 1 trillion keys per second, but a couple of slides ago we showed that in 30 years computers can be expected to be 8 million times stronger. So let's assume that your attacker can try 8 million trillion keys per second. Smoking. First, let's try and get a handle on how big a number this is. Here's 1 trillion. Here's 2 trillion. Here's 3 trillion. Here's 1 million trillion. And here's half the number of possible DES keys. And as you can see, if you can do 1 million trillion per second, you can find a lot of these DES keys in less than a second. And here's half the number of possible AES 128 keys. And even at 1 million trillion per second, it's going to take billions of years. And if you're still not convinced it's enough time, calculate the cost of electricity to run all these computers. It's prohibitive. So recall, DES and all AES variations, 128, 192, 256, are all impenetrable to statistical attack. The best a cryptanalyst can do is to try every single possible key. And to use the analogy of combination lock, if this one's going to take the cryptanalyst billions of years, why bother with this one? I've come across 2 good arguments for using AES 256. The first is quantum computing. But this is years and years out and is only available to really well-heeled governments. And quite frankly, if you think NSA is really attacking you, you're going to need a lot more help than you'll find here. Here's a chart summarizing some of the things I just talked about. Actually, the best argument I saw for AES 256 is, hey, if it's available, why not use it? And it's a decent argument, especially if you can take the about 40% increase in encryption time. Of more concern is it might give you a false sense of security. For instance, in my opinion and opinion of many others, it's much more important to get a good secret key, preferably one made by a good key maker like a key store. Because there are programs that are just made to guess your secret key. Let's say you choose this one. Not the best, but far from the worst. Well, here's what's known about you already. If there's a number, it's going to be a 1 or a 2, and it's usually at the end of the password. Well, no hit here. Well, if a capital letter is required, it's usually at the beginning, and it's often followed by a vowel. Boom, 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 3 hits. And if you know someone's personal info, you know to look for a birthday. That looks like a hit. TV show, food, etc. And I assume that the cryptanalysts got plenty more stuff like this. And of course there are lists, new ones made every year of the most frequently used passwords. So let's say he starts here. And they go through a bunch of iterations like this. Well, let's say 1,000,000 iterations. Oh, and let's say 100 million iterations. Well, after a couple of billion here and a couple of billion there, they eventually get to this, and this looks like it's getting you a little bit nervous. And then after trying about 500 billion combinations, they get down to here, and if the attacker can try 1 trillion per second, he's only used up a half a second so far. Cryptanalysts are an incredibly clever bunch. Here's an attack. When I read about it, I said to myself, that's pretty simple. How come I didn't think of that? So here's the key takeaways. If you have reason to believe that your encrypted data will be under attack, use a key store to make the secret key. Second, secure these keys in a good repository like a key store. Third and last, only share the keys when needed. If you're using a cloud provider to store encrypted data and they also have a copy of your keys, they also have a copy of your clear data. Yeah, you may like and trust your postal delivery person, but you really want them having a copy of keys to your house and your car, etc. The next couple of slides are just going to show you how a lot of secret key encryption works. You don't need any of this stuff to use encryption. It's just here for your amusement. In particular, I'm going to show a widely used encryption technique, and that is adding the key to the clear text to get encrypted text and adding the key again to the encrypted text to get back the original clear text. Here's some made-up data for clear text, a secret key, and we'll see how when we add them together we get encrypted text. The operation we're going to use is simply adding the two numbers together, and don't even bother to carry. So in the first case, 1 plus 1 is 0. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 is another 0. 1 plus 0 is 1, and you can take it from there. Then we'll take the encrypted text, put it up here, copy over the secret key, add them together, and we get back the original clear text. The trick is when you add the secret key to itself, you just get back a bunch of zeros, and anything added to 0 is what you started with. The actual function here is called XOR, and it's widely used in many areas of computer science. Here's the last look at the secret key lengths we just talked about, and for comparison purposes, here is the length of an RSA public-private key. And these chapters will give you more insight into public-private key technology.